and welcome to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm Mina Rzouki and I'm your host, and I'm joined by my co-presenter today, Andy Brassell, my partner in crime. It's been an interesting week of football, no club football, but don't worry, there's been international fixtures to contend with. Now, the interesting news is Ronaldo is still sad. Apparently, he's still a professional. Fabregas is also now sad, and we've got a Swiss player claiming he is Albanian. But let's start off with the World Cup qualifiers in Europe. So there's some interesting games. Germany, Austria is one of them, or rather Austria, Germany, and of course England. But I want to start off with Capello's Russia, because I thought that one, they actually struggled against Northern Ireland. Did you ever imagine that would happen?
They did, but it was always going to be a bit difficult for him because, you know, it's such a changing culture from him. He has to deal with a lot of home-based players that he's still getting to know. I think the important thing for Capello is he's learning from maybe the mistakes that Hiddink made with Turkey, you know, another big football country. And I think Hiddink maybe thought his reputation and his ability was something that would get the job done. And he took a lot of criticism in Istanbul for not going and living in the country, just almost doing the job by correspondence. Yeah. And it looks like Capello's not going to do that. You know, he's getting to know the players. And for example, in the current qualifiers, and especially in the Northern Ireland game, both the goals scored by players from Zenit St. Petersburg, and relying on a core from the national champions has to be a good idea while you're still learning the ropes.
But do you think that they'll get there in the end with what's going on, or you think that, because you see, my problem with them is he hasn't changed much. You know, what their problem was essentially, in my view, was that they did really well up until the point they got to the final third, Russia, and then they can't find that key pass at the end that will start converting their chances.
Well, logically, they've already got those players to do that.
And Kirchhoff in Euro 2012 was what, the guy who missed the most amount of chances possible?
You can't,
and that's still their problem.
You can't legislate for that. You know, here's a guy who scores goals for fun in the Russian Premier League. He'll probably score goals for fun in the Champions League as well this season when we look onto
Yeah, but he needs 45 chances to convert one.
Well, not in the league he doesn't. He just had a very, very bad trot during the Euros. And, you know, he's a striker who knows the European game. He's spent time at Sevilla as well. You know, he's a very confident guy, and he's very, very useful in terms of linking and bringing other players into play as well. So I think the biggest call that Capello had to make was not picking Arshavin. And he's done that, and that was a big deal because he was the captain. But, you know, he'd really alienated himself by the end of the campaign amongst the fans as much as anything else. So I think that was a good early point for Capello to sort of show his strength.
Yeah, but that was almost what it was, though. Just a case of, this is me, I'm the coach, and I'm going to do something to prove that, like, I'm here to make the decisions.
But he's not good enough anymore to be undroppable, you know, and it looks like he's not going to be playing regular football. So it's almost, you know, if he was more cherished as a personality at the moment, maybe it would be or have been a tougher choice for Capello to make, but it wasn't because of that fallout where he got caught saying to the fan he could shove off or whatever at the end of the tournament.
Well, obviously they did really well against Israel. That probably has more to do with the disarray of the Israeli defence, but it should be an easier ride for Russia coming up. Now France, another team that has all the problems inside dressing room. Obviously that's not Russia's problem, but this has been something that Deschamps is trying to work on, and it was very interesting how he came out afterwards and said, you know, my team's all together, they're all fighting for the same cause, and, you know, they're all in there trying to hassle the opponents. Do you think that this is going to last, or is this only for the first few games that we're going to see a France that's united on the pitch but probably disjointed off it?
I think they can get there. I think most people's worry...
They always get there, but they never, you know, this is no longer the team that seems to have the leadership on the pitch necessary.
No, well, that's a problem that Deschamps is already trying to address, and he's done that by bringing Rio Mavuba into the side in place of Jan M'Vila. And a lot of people would say M'Vila is better on ability. He adapted to international football a lot quicker when he was a lot less experienced. But Mavuba is someone who's so respected for the way he's captained Lille. And he's someone who's not only a stand-up guy, he's someone who has a really good grasp of dressing room politics. And he's sorted out spats between teammates as well when a few senior pros at Lille were unhappy when Eden Hazard started becoming a part of the team and they thought he was a bit cocky. He managed to sort that out. And to manage to have someone who can facilitate all those different egos is something incredible. It's something that France could really do with. And I think as well, the thing with Deschamps bringing Mavouba back...
But there's just one man. It's just one man.
No, that's just one man, but he's just an example. He's a symbol for the rest of what Deschamps is going to do, because what he's shown is by bringing back Mavouba, who a lot of people thought his international career was finished, he's saying there's no favouritism. Whereas with Laurent Blanc, he's stuck with Rami and Mexes as a centre-back pair, no matter how badly they played. And, you know, there was just no way he was going to change things. He wasn't going to bring in Giroud as some sort of attacking focal point, because, you know, that's just not what they did. He kept Alou Diarra in the squad despite the fact he was terrible for Marseille last season. Of course, we hope he'll do better for West Ham. But, you know, I think this is a good opportunity to start with a clean slate, and Deschamps has shown he's not one to pander to egos, and you know he's got the sort of name in French football where he doesn't have to do that either.
Okay, well obviously he has coached some big sides, and that includes of course Juventus at the time, but for some reason when he got the job everyone said that he was not the right man to guide this France along, that he didn't have the character to do it, although you know obviously just the 3-1 win over Belarus suggests that he's actually united the squad, and he might be pragmatic enough to just make it all about the football and about uniting them. But is he the right man?
I think he's the right man in the circumstance. I think what a lot of people are worried about is that it'll be ghastly football, because for the last season and a half, Marseille have played awful, awful football. And towards the end,
your levels of footballers as well available.
Well, I think it's outlook, and I think it's interesting. You know
he's
how
very simplistic in his approach to football.
Well, it goes back to that word that you were just using there, pragmatic.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because you expect people when they become coaches to be very different to how they were as players, almost the opposite. Deschamps is exactly now, today. He wasn't always the case when he was managing Monaco in 2003, 2004, and they're playing very exciting football in the Champions League. But now, it's just at the end of the Belarus game, he had 3 defensive midfielders as if they were like trying to hold a lead away to Brazil or something like that. They had Mavouba, Etienne Capoue, and Blaise Matuidi. And you think, oh, come on. You know,
yeah,
we're going to be holding it in the corner flag next. Come on.
Yeah, but with that squad and with their defence, do you really blame him? I mean, I know that it is, but they have to learn how to do that.
No, you're right. It's getting off to the right start, isn't it? So I suppose that's fair enough. But you know, I suppose on the attacking side, they did at least show some way of like some ability to concretise what they created, and I think the fact that Ribéry was so good was a part of that as well.
I think he's always good in qualifiers, maybe not necessarily when he gets there. And lopsided 4-3-3 there they had going. But anyway, let's move on to Austria and Germany, which I thought Austria was a little bit harsh, both on the pitch and off it, and they were booing the national anthem when for Germany.
Well, you've got a good stat about this as well, don't you?
That was my stat. My stat's wonderful.
You're wanting to creep this out. Come on.
I've been dying to get this out. 9 Austrians that started the game play for the Bundesliga.
That's not bad, is it?
They know exactly what they were doing. And honestly, they came so close to winning it that you almost felt sorry for them, not even managing to get 1 point.
Yeah, well, they really did come back strongly into it. And Junuzovic, who scored their goal, is great for him because he started the season very, very well with Werder Bremen. And, of course, another player who's been very, very good for Werder Bremen so far this season, Marko Arnautovic, the sort of bad boy of Austrian football. So I think that he's sort of found some stability. You know, he's just become a father, and now he seems to be a bit more down to earth as compared to when he arrived at Werder Bremen, where he basically came in with a glittered cape to the dressing room.
That's exactly what I was doing if I was a footballer. But the thing with them is that so many chances created and none of them taken. So it's going to be a problem, because I think that it's really a shame, because for me a great strength of a squad is being able to create chances. All you need is that ability to then convert them, and this is what Germany showed. They are professional. They took their chances and they exploited all the opportunities that they had in any defensive errors. Just Austria couldn't do that. So do they have a shot? You
have the players to do that with Austria. Like Martin Harnik scores a lot of goals for Stuttgart. Arnautovic maybe he's got out of the rhythm because he's used to playing wide right. Maybe that's the possibility. But I think there was a sense that Germany got away with it a little. And whereas I think you make a very good point about Austria, how that they maybe missed an opportunity. At least they'll have the feeling that they have something to build on. Whereas Germany, I think a lot of people are asking questions. You know, how much did losing that semi-final at Euro 2012 knock their confidence? And for them, you talked about leadership with France. Where's the leadership for Germany on the pitch, really?
Well, this is why I think that Italy love their old players, because they might not be that exciting sometimes, but they can guarantee you experience and they'll know how to carry the team. Well, there's a great, they were actually saying that in the Austrian newspapers, there's no point, it's Germany, they're always going to win every match, Of course, Italy will say they'll win every match until they come across Italy, who themselves have had some troubles over the last 2 matches, especially against Malta. And I thought that they would actually against Malta. I mean, obviously against Bulgaria, they never manage anyway. So the fact that they managed a point was almost like, well, you really should have done better, but Bulgaria really had a good go on it. And you could just tell that players like Jovinko got lost in between their centre-backs. And do you think it's just a case of September being a bad month for Italy? Or?
Well, of course, that's what Prandelli was saying, and you can understand him playing it down. And at the end of it, they still have 4 points. It's not completely disastrous.
4 points against Bulgaria and Malta.
Yeah. That's the caveat, really, isn't it? And I think you can almost let them off the Malta game, I think, because they've experimented, they've tried a bit of different personnel, and I think you've almost got time to do that in the qualifiers, especially if you haven't got an absolutely impossible group. And Italy are still trying to build something. I think the fact that they overachieved in Euro 2012 shouldn't detract from that fact that really Prandelli is on a sort of long-term project, isn't he? And I think even the fact that they lost that lead in Bulgaria, which is very annoying from their perspective. On the other hand, what Osvaldo did, I mean, what a great alternative.
Yeah, that was it. He was like the brilliance and the entire squad that just failed to create anything. That I think what the Bulgaria game exposed was the over-reliance on Pirlo. Sometimes the lack of dynamism in midfield, with Claudio Marchisio, Daniele De Rossi perhaps not giving the kind of energy. And when that midfield doesn't click, Italy is so dependent on it that nothing else seems to work for them. But you really did need on this occasion a great Osvaldo. And I think that Malta, with their coach, that other than the fact that he showed actual defensive stability against Italy, I thought that as a team they're at least trying to create some sort of attacking philosophy for their squad and trying to not make them defend so much, as you could see in their games before. But when you play the big teams, it's hard for you to try to do anything but defend, which brings up the other debate, recent debate: should minnows have to go into a group stage before they start playing big names?
Well, I don't think so. If we look at these first couple of rounds of qualifiers, it's been quite a good advert for the minnows. Even the Faroes made it pretty difficult for Germany in the first game. They struggled for a really long time. You've got Luxembourg making it very, very difficult for Portugal, and then going to Belfast.
But then
and getting
for every
point from
great
Northern
team
Ireland.
like that, there's Moldova. There's the Faroe Islands, who actually were only beaten 3-0.
Yeah, that's
still,
that's
it
not
seems
so bad.
it's about let's try to minimise how badly we do. Let's just try to defend, try to make sure that they don't win by too much of a margin, but it's nothing about their own style of football. So maybe if they did have a chance of qualifying in their own group stage, then you can sort of improve their level of football and they can learn something.
I'm not convinced. I think the way to learn is to
play the big boys,
play the bigger teams. It's got to be, and to learn from their cultures. You just look at it from like an intermediate to advanced level. Look at the way everyone's looking at Spain. Look at the way everyone's looking at Germany and the way they produce players. There's no way of, I don't think, going for the highest achieving team like Spain and completely copying them. That's not possible, because that's something that's involved in a particular environment, a particular culture. But you can magpie little bits from everywhere, and that's something that perhaps England will look to do when they develop players through St George's Park when that opens. That's something that maybe smaller teams like. Well, perhaps there are some like Andorra where it's just not going to happen, where you just don't have a national league.
What it is, yeah.
But other teams can do that. And you think, I don't know, if we go back to like 1988, England were beating Turkey 8-0 at Wembley. Whereas if you fast forward to 2002, you had the first half where this incredibly cultured set of midfield players absolutely passed England off the pitch before England managed to dig in their own traditional style and win the game late on.
well, I guess you could say. Yeah, I guess so. Well, I guess there's two opinions for this. But that's all we have on European qualifiers, although there will be a story that I will tell you when you come back. Let's move on to South American qualifiers after the break. See you then. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. Now, enough of Europe. We're moving on to the South American World Cup qualifiers, and it's getting very heated. But before that, I have to tell you a story about a Swiss international. You may know him. He's called Granit Xhaka. And he apparently came out on Facebook and said that there was a reason why he fluffed his chances in front of goal. And that is because apparently he feels very Albanian in the match that they played against Albania. If you look at it, this is what is meant to be his Facebook account, and this is what he says on it. You know, I don't understand much of it, but perhaps the most interesting thing is the last sentence. For you, maybe I'm a traitor, but feel completely Albanian. Now, this has been blown out of proportion because a lot of people believe this to be his actual Twitter account, his Facebook account. But according to Swiss media, which barely mentioned the subject, it's completely fake. It's not him actually saying that. And that they're very happy and his future with Switzerland is not at stake.
Well, I think there's room for mischief to be made here. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone in Switzerland. I'd be surprised if it was him, because he couldn't even spell his own name right on his Facebook account. But I just think that if you look back to, say, the 2011 European Under-21 Championships...
well, this is your nifty little
This
stat.
is my stat. I've been dying for this one. There were 8 or 9 players who, if Kosovo had an international football team, could have qualified for them instead of Switzerland. So it's
Wow.
clear that, you know, that they've assimilated the children of people who've come to the country really, really well, and you know, people who've moved there when they've been younger as well. And it's definitely giving a different flavour to Swiss football. You know, you look at the players like Zerdan Shaqiri who've come in as well. Him and Xhaka are the two
so many of them
outstanding
there.
ones.
Yeah,
Exactly. But there are lots of different players, and you know, it's changing our perception of Swiss football.
it is an interesting. I think Switzerland's quite an exciting team to look at now. But let's move on to South American World Cup qualifiers, because of course the most interesting match was Colombia and Uruguay.
Yes.
Colombia. Wow, Uruguay, what is going on with them at the moment? Should we start off with how amazing Colombia is? Because finally they seem to have gotten the best out of Falcao, which is what we've been waiting for so long, the great number 9.
Yeah, well, it's funny. A lot of people who watch Colombian football a lot and watch the Colombian national team a lot were saying, especially going into last year's Copa America, how Falcao wasn't quite the same player that he was for Porto with the national team, because he wasn't really getting the service. But I think 2 things have changed. One, he is getting the service, and we'll come on to James Rodriguez in a minute.
Yes, made such a difference.
Is going to be a key player for Porto this season. But also, Falcao changed, and it's something we've talked about on here before, the fact that because he was replacing Kun Agüero at Atletico Madrid, you know, there was that expectation that he couldn't be just a guy who waited for the crosses and, you know, who rose like a salmon to bullet them into the back of the net. But he had to come and get the ball. He had to go past players. He can do that. He can link now.
But do you not also think that the fact that the pace of the game's changed a little? You know, he doesn't suit slow-playing teams, which is essentially what maybe Colombia was. Whereas now they're a bit quicker off the pace. There's more opportunity being presented to him, so he can be that leader to guide the attack.
Well, perhaps. Now, I think the fact that he could fit straight back into Porto tomorrow, were it financially and ideologically possible, I think that's part of it. And you know, going on to James, he is a guy who he came to Porto. Yeah, he came to Porto as an out-and-out winger, but he's played on the right side of attack a lot more. He's obviously got the attributes to score a lot of goals as well. And now Hulk has moved on to Zenit St. Petersburg. It looks like James will be almost his direct replacement on the right side of attack, cutting in onto that fantastic left foot that he's got. And like you were saying, he's got terrific pace as well. He's good at running with the ball. He's someone who's going to become a world superstar, clearly.
It's not him. They've got a few other midfielders. There's one as well with a great passing range that they've brought in. There's a lot more service going forward, you know. But
of course, Guarin's been excellent in the last couple of years. Yeah.
Yes, but what about their defence?
Well,
You see, this is the thing. It's all well and good when you're going out and attacking, but if you don't have such great centre-backs, then I think this is a problem.
well, I think you could say it's a problem for a lot of South American teams. So maybe it's something that won't necessarily betray them. I'm not sure they've got a significantly weaker defence than Argentina have had at various points in the last couple of years. Of course, they went into the last World Cup with a back four of 4 centre-backs.
Yeah, it's true.
With Nicolau Otamendi playing at right-back. And you still have Marcos Rojo of Sporting playing at left-back when he really is a centre-half. So, you know, I think we've seen Brazil have had problems as well. They had dreadful problems in the Olympic final against Mexico. So,
well, let's have a look at the table at the moment. So Colombia went in at 6 on Friday, and then they won 2 games and are now second, just behind Argentina. Meanwhile, Uruguay, who were tipped to be, you know, one of the favourites, were absolutely shocking. You have to understand that for their first game, they were missing Luis Suarez. But I think that with them, it's probably a generational thing. Their great players are now getting old, and their great, you know, sort of their youngsters aren't performing as we saw from the Olympics. They aren't really doing well for themselves, the likes of Gaston Ramirez and so on and so forth. And
Ramirez has got a period of adaptation ahead of him at Southampton, and not just a period of adaptation to a new club, but a new country, and a country where a lot of people think he might struggle, because, you know, there's no doubt about the ability he's got. You can open a tin of beans with his left foot, whatever, but you know, in terms of the pace, you know, it's something that's completely different, because he likes time on the ball, and he's never going to get that.
He's never going to get that. And also, but especially because Uruguay aren't a team that play their football around possession-based football. They are a team that just hassle you for possession, and they work with it, and they make that count. Now, this is the problem. They can't make that count, because at the moment it seems that Cavani's not working up top with Luis Suarez, and then you're missing Diego Forlan.
Well, they've always like struggled for that link without Forlan. There's
What's
no
going to
doubt
happen?
about
Who's
it.
going to replace him?
Well, I don't know, but for me, a big problem I think during the Olympics is they're missing Diego Perez in the middle. That pivot who breaks play up as well, who helps them get the ball back, who can help them out when they're in trouble. Essentially their style of play, really. Yeah, he was magnificent during the World Cup. He's not such a celebrated player. But when you're talking about players getting a little bit older, you know, that's a category that he falls into as well, and you wonder how much longer he can do that job.
Yeah, whereas you see, I think their defence is not very bad at all.
Well, the thing is as well, their defence gives them attacking options, like because they have Maxi Pereira on the right. He's got 5 lungs, I think, at last count.
Cáceres.
Yeah, of course, exactly. Very athletic as well. You've got Alvaro Pereira and now Vinter, who can switch back there. Normally he plays left midfield, but he can sort of cover an attacking full-back as well. So it's quite a good way to go.
Quick question, do you think they'll make it?
Yeah, I think they will. Of course, we're not even halfway through the qualifiers at the moment. It's a really particular system of qualifying, isn't it? Because it's just such a long slog. But if you can't qualify with Brazil not in it, I mean, you know, come on. Come on
now. OK, well, that's all we have for the World Cup qualifiers. But join us after the break, and we'll do a quick roundup of the news around the world of football. See you then. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show. I'm Mina Rzouki, and I'm still joined by Andy Brassell, my partner in crime. Now, we know that Cristiano Ronaldo is sad, but it seems that now Cesc Fabregas is also sad. He's not really being played as much as he wants to be. Villanova seems to prefer him playing in midfield and, you know, players playing in their actual roles as opposed to everyone just doing everything. So do we think that we're actually going to see Fabregas much this season? Or?
Well, it's clear that the Classico isn't very good for the soul. I think that's the first point to make. But I can understand why Cesc is frustrated, and I can understand why the club are frustrated with him, because, you know, it took a long time to piece the deal together and get him back. But of course...
But they knew that he had to compete with World Cup. Well, when was he ever going to play? So they knew that when they were bidding for him. They bid on him. It was almost like a nostalgic thing.
Oh, no, but it's not, is it? It's someone who can fit in, who knows the way they play.
Future.
But the thing is, yeah, of course. But like, people are expecting him to develop into Xavi, and, you know, that's not really, well, because he's 1 in a million, also because he's developed completely different characteristics since he's been in England. And that's the thing, I think, that when he's gone back home, and a lot of people have made it the big deal of him going back home. And of course, these players like him and Piqué are more valuable to Barcelona than they are to other clubs because they've been trained through La Masia in the first place. But basically, he's like a lad who's maybe been to boarding school and then university and then come back to live with his parents. And for them, he's still a 14-year-old boy. But he's actually become an adult in the meantime. He's learnt to lead a team. He's learnt how to play in a totally different style of football. And he still hairs around like a Premier League player. And, you know, I think he finds himself in the box a little bit more than a Barcelona midfield player should, perhaps. And he's almost relearning the game there. And so I think it's too early almost in his Barcelona career, because you have to assume that he'll be there for life now. It's a bit too early for him to find his niche in such a functioning unit.
No, I agree with that, and I do think that he has a lot of competition when it comes to midfield, and it's going to take him a while before he finds his own role. So I understand that, but I thought that surely both sides of that knew. Both he knew that going into Barcelona it's going to take a while before he finds his natural role.
But of course,
and they were going to think the same too.
Yeah, but of course there's going to be a degree of impatience because
it's
a big club and he's a big player. You know, so you know those type of people tend to be impatient.
Yeah,
you know, that's the way it is.
It's true. And for Spain, he was brilliant. But
he's been outstanding for them. Yeah.
And now then there's Ronaldo, who apparently now has been offered a contract for life, or someone's thinking about it. He has a meeting with Perez lined up. What do you think is going on there? Or will he be allowed to leave for 200 million? Surely every player should be allowed to leave for 200 million.
Well, he'll be allowed to leave for his buyout clause because, you know, Real Madrid have no legal recourse against that. Whether anyone will pay it is a completely different kettle of fish, isn't it? And I don't think that will happen. You know, I think there's a bit of bargaining going on there, and he does deserve a pay rise. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He shouldn't be on a level wage with Kaká. That's just absolutely ridiculous. Of course, we've been over this before, but I think really the international break has come at such a good time for both the club and the player to reassess and decide what's really important. You could just imagine him sort of putting his little spotted handkerchief to one side in the dressing room and going to Florentino. Hug.
Oh God, that's brilliant. But you know, I spoke to some Madridistas who claimed that he did this just during this international break so that everyone would speak about him, because there's just no news going on. So they can continue
There's not if you're playing Luxembourg and Azerbaijan.
There we go. So you can continue talking about Ronaldo as much as possible. How are we going to please him? Is he going to go? And this is what he said on his Facebook page. This is when he's trying to show that he is just a model professional. The final result of both games was very positive, and it is now time to return to the club and think only about my club. I would like to reaffirm, without being concerned about contracts, that my focus is solely on winning every game and every available trophy with the essential company of my teammates and all Madridistas. And by the way, he stuck to that. He was the first player back from these internationals training hard now.
Well, that is what he does.
I know, and he gets so much stick for not being this great, this great man, but he's such a model professional, despite, that I'm being sad.
Well, he is totally, isn't he? And I think people fail to notice that, all people in life are full of contradictions, and, there's no reason that he can't be a little bit sulky, yet when he comes to playing football, when he comes to training, an incredible professional. That's never been in any doubt amongst anyone.
No, you're right. And speaking of money and wages and salaries, of course, Gazzetta dello Sport published all the salaries of Serie A and the highest earners, and who was making such little money, and which club was paying the most. Are you shocked that despite the fact that everyone seems to have left Milan over the summer, that they're still paying 120 million a season, their highest earner being Pato at 4? Pato makes a lot of money for playing once or twice a season. Yeah. You've got Juventus, who've raised they're paying a little bit more than they used to last season, 115, Inter 100 million, and of course it goes all the way down. Napoli is actually not at the top.
No, I mean, it was very funny what you said there about how Milan is still at the top despite their big sales. And of course, Inter have had this big economy drive this summer and bought 11 players, is it, or 12? And
yeah, but
you know, that's just the way they roll in that part of Italy. But you know, I think you can see a lot of those, apart from De Rossi, who's like quite a recent renewal, like about 6 months ago. The rest of them are sort of historical contracts. You know, I mean, it's not ideal to be paying Pato anywhere near that for what they're getting out of him, but for the player he should be,
that is how much he should be. Yeah. Of course, we've got Tancredi Palmieri with us, our Italian football correspondent. Ciao, Tancredi, how are you? Ooh. Let's try you again because I can't hear you at the moment.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Ah, there's just a really bad noise coming out at the moment. Let's try one more time. Okay, well, it doesn't seem like we're going to get to him. Right. So some interesting things came out in the sense that Giaccherini is on only £600,000, sorry, €1,000, which I thought was tiny for a player who's now playing for the Italy international team.
It happens, and we were talking about this again off air about Beñat of Real Betis in Spain. They're looking at renewing his contract at the moment. I'm not sure he's looking at renewing his contract at the moment, but they're paying him €200,000 a year, and this is a guy who's, you know, their best player in the Spanish national team. You know, when people go on a really meteoric rise, you know, that can really make a difference. But I think going back to Giaccherini, of course, that we're on, I think as well, you know, you can assume, like if we look at the top figures there, that everyone at Juventus must be earning that much money. Everyone at Milan, well, maybe everyone at Milan is earning that much money.
Probably are.
I don't know, but there has to be some sort of balance, and you know, it's always a very difficult balancing act. But there has to be accepted in any squad that there's a hierarchy of pay, and you know, some are, I guess, a little bit preyed on. Real Madrid have done this before for, you know, being there for the love and playing for the club of their dreams.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not sure whether, you know, he's actually Interista. He's an Inter fan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's quite funny that he's playing for Juventus.
Gosh, what would he play for if he was a Juventus fan?
Pogba's, I think, on the same amount of money or just slightly less, maybe on 400,000, which, you know, is probably not fair. But then you've got, you know, the likes of Bonucci, 1.7 and all that, you know.
And the chocolate shops of Turin, you'll run out of that money pretty quickly, won't you? Yeah,
Cavani 4.5, which you're not very happy about because you think he should be making so much more, which I don't think so. Again, I think I might be the only person who doesn't think he should be making more than that.
But the most important thing to know about Cavani, as well as the incredible amount of like Napoli merchandise he sells, is the fact that, you know, he is someone who's absolutely iconic. He's their most iconic player since Maradona.
But that's because they make everyone iconic. I mean, if they wanted to, they can make, you know, they've made Hamsik, they've made Lavezzi. They can do that, and also because he has that Jesus look to him, you know, you know, the flowing locks, you know, and he's just like a nice guy, you know, that they've made him their icon. But I don't know.
But he's backed it up playing-wise, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has backed it up playing-wise, for sure. But 4.5 million for Napoli is a lot of money. So, I mean, he earns more than Pirlo.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Again, that it sort of is defined by where he was at when he signed, and a lot of people thought Pirlo was on the way out. They won't admit it now, of course. Yeah. But a lot of people thought Pirlo was on the way out when he signed for Juventus, and we're like, oh, this is a bit of a surprising cheap pickup. Isn't that the sort of thing that Milan normally do? Yeah. But I think if you look at you know what Cavani's worth to Napoli nowadays, I don't think it's completely unreasonable. And of course, you know, De Laurentiis completely milked the re-signing, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he does. He milks everything. That's the great thing about De Laurentiis. And also, actually, Udinese, just a quick note there, they made 17% more sales when it came to their season ticket holders. So they keep selling talent and they keep attracting more viewers. I think it's amazing. Udinese, what a club. But after the break, we'll come back and start discussing the Champions League fixtures coming up next week. Sadly, Udinese is not part of that. We'll see you then. 17% right. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. Now we're moving on to the Champions League fixtures, and there's some really interesting games coming up, including Real Madrid versus Manchester City and Chelsea versus Juventus. But we're going to start off with, of course, Real Madrid, because that is probably the biggest match that we've got, both for an English team and for the Spaniards. What do you think? Now, this is interesting. Madrid won 6 straight home matches in last season's competition, scoring 24 goals. City lost 3 of 5 games on their European travels last season.
This says everything there is
Does
to
it say
know
everything, or
about,
has there been changes
well,
since?
it says everything there is to know about what a big challenge it is for Manchester City. And I think for them, they've got to avoid a repeat of the Bayern Munich game last year. Now that they went to the Allianz, they were completely outplayed. It was 2-0. It could have been 4. Of course, everyone remembers it for the Tevez thing, but they don't remember it for the fact that City were absolutely played off the pitch. And as you can see from those stats, as you can see from the way they've played away from home in 2012 in the Premier League and how they've continued to play away from home, it's a big task for them. They weren't great when they went to Liverpool for their first away match this season. They need a big improvement.
So, okay, let's bring in Tancredi Palmieri. Hello, now we can actually hear you. Can you hear us?
Buongiorno, guys. I can hear you perfectly. These are the champions. That's because I'm here in the Champions League.
Okay, let's talk about Real Madrid, Manchester City. Do you think that there's going to be a lot of suffering for City, considering that they're now in the group of death? Or do you think that they can have a go at this Real Madrid that sort of stuttered in the beginning stages of this league, of their league?
Well, it's very significant that it's starting in this way, the campaign for both of them, because it has to be the season of the 10th Champions League for Mourinho, but also has to be the season in which Manchester City and Mancini has to do something in Europe. The thing is that why can be different this for Manchester City and for Mancini this year? Because I've been following Mancini since the beginning of his career, and he always missed the big games of a season. Maybe winning the leagues, but missing the big games. That changed, actually, for the first time in his career. Changed last season with the games for the Premier League against Manchester United. So, to check if his inferiority complex in this kind of games finally has been solved, starting in this way, is, I think, the best thing. In front, he will have the Cristiano Ronaldo that is at the top, as you were mentioning. By the way, I wanted to bring one small anecdote about the Cristiano Ronaldo professionality.
It better be a nice one. It better be a nice one.
To me, it's. I can tell you one thing, Mina. When I was coach of the kids, to make them the example of the perfect professional, I was bringing them this example. They were kids of 14 years old, so 14, 15, so I could speak about this. The anecdote is back from 2008. He was recovering from the injury he had at the Euro Championship. It was the time he was together with that bombastic girl named Nereida. But he always been with bombastic girl. Was named Nereida Gajard was her name. So that lasted just one summer. They were on all the newspapers. Then after, of course, as all the good ladies are doing after being with Cristiano Ronaldo, she was leaking the details of her story with Cristiano Ronaldo. Well, actually, usually when there is one girl that is leaking this detail, it's always something like, oh, look how so nasty and how so unprofessional the guy was behaving. Well, she was saying, giving this example, and she was saying he was so professional that even in that moment, every 20 minutes, we were just stopping because he had to put the eyes on the knee where he had just surgery. I never saw something. Viva Cristiano Ronaldo. What you can pretend more than that?
So basically you think Ronaldo's professional sense might help him against City?
Oh, wow. When you have that kind of professionality, that can help everyone, not only against Manchester City.
Okay, let's talk about a team that has loads of creative talent and a coach who a lot of people have accused of only being there for a year because they're waiting for the big signing that might be Pep Guardiola in a year. So Chelsea now have Roberto Di Matteo. I'm not entirely sure what that man had to do more in order to secure the job, but he's there now. He's doing terrifically, a great job in the Premier League right now with Chelsea. How is he going to perform against Juventus? Because honestly, looking at that team, it should be Chelsea going up top, especially since they won the Champions League last season. But I think that everyone is undervaluing Juventus. Do you see this as being a tough challenge for Chelsea or one that they will manage to win, considering all the attacking talent they have?
is going to be very tough. I don't know if everyone is undervaluing Juventus. I did just today a preview of the Champions League, and I was checking the odds.
Maybe it's the people who write to me on Twitter. Some of them said to me, well, considering the fact that everyone is well aware of the fact that I like Juventus, they tweeted me saying, good luck against Norchelon.
Yeah. No, but you know, for bookmakers along the world, Juventus is the 7th of the table in Champions League. And it makes quite sense because after the two Spanish, the Manchester, and let's say Barcelona and Chelsea, Bayern and Chelsea, they place Juventus. And to me, actually, this is the real value. It's maybe the same level with Bayern. Anyway, in the top 8 for sure. I think that as a start for Chelsea, the worst possible team that they could welcome is Juventus itself, Juventus themselves, because of course they couldn't play Real, Barcelona, the others. But Juventus is the only one amongst the big ones that is already sure of their system of playing, but that has everything to demonstrate, but nothing to lose, because they are just back in Champions League. They have time to recover, to make the points that would qualify them. But they have the big debut, the big gala, and they want to perform at the first game. Juventus has nothing to lose. If they will lose, say, okay, it's the first comeback, it's okay, it's in Stamford Bridge, it's Chelsea. Chelsea have everything to lose because they are back from the hangover of winning the Champions League, back from being beaten up from Atletico Madrid. So maybe there will be a bit more fear to fail than, I would say, dream to succeed. It could be a really good night for Juventus.
But what is going to be the key thing? Because obviously what Juventus have is they don't have a striker. Essentially, if you look at Chelsea, then perhaps they could say the same with Fernando Torres up front. But I think that with Juventus, what they do have is physicality, and they have the power to keep going for 90 minutes, optimal levels of fitness at the moment, and creativity. Do you think that their physical power might be a little bit too much for Chelsea to handle?
The mix between the physical power and the creativity of Pirlo, for sure. The key is as a lot of times, the key, I would say, is in the midfield. I was in Monte Carlo for, I was in Monte Carlo for Chelsea at Atletico Madrid. And, I mean, we saw unbelievable Falcao. I loved Adrian. But, I mean, the way in the midfield was just powerless. The Chelsea midfield was powerless in both moments of the game, when Atletico was leading the game or when they were counter-attack. The way the midfield was thrashed, and they just couldn't keep Atletico Madrid. Gave me the idea that if the 5-man, it will be 5-man midfield of Juventus, will be fearless in Stamford Bridge with the Marchisio and Vidal dynamics, and when the Pirlo creativity, so making the space also to protect Pirlo, Chelsea could really struggle. They need the kind of Ramirez at the top form.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is not that they can't create their chances, it's whether or not they can take it, because there's Asamoah, there's Isla, so they've got a lot of creativity and power. But what do you think, Andy? What do you think? It's a tough game for Chelsea, or?
Well, I think it is a fairly difficult game for Chelsea, but on the other hand, I think you can overcook this element of what happened in the Super Cup final. And people talk about, you know, Essien and Morelos leaving as if they were their first choice players. You know, Essien's nowhere near what he was, and he's got a lot to prove at Real Madrid this season. Morelos was a good squad player and maybe should have played more, but, you know, he's by no means the perfect defensive midfielder. You know, he's just someone who can do a job there. So I expect Chelsea to defend better than that when it comes to this game. And they, of course, are noted for their physical power as well.
Yeah, that's true. But just before I let you go, Tank, just a quick question. Who are you looking forward to seeing next week?
In Champions League, you mean?
Yeah, which team?
Well, I want to see Juventus in Stamford Bridge. I'm looking forward to see what will happen with Borussia Dortmund. Because Dortmund is probably with Juventus and with the Spanish playing the best and more efficient football in Europe. And they've been unlucky in the campaign last season and very unlucky in the draw this year, with Manchester City and Real Madrid. So I think that if they start with a great game, that could put pressure, not on Real Madrid, but could put pressure on Manchester City. If Manchester City, as I think, won't win in Bernabeu, could put pressure because, wow, what a challenge that would be for Mancini if, again, he doesn't make it to round of 16.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Tancredi. We'll see you next week on the World of Football show. Ciao for now.
Ciao, guys.
We're going to do a quick round robin for the rest of the interesting fixtures coming up. So just a quick chat. Montpellier versus Arsenal.
Well, I was speaking to Olivier Giroud about 3 or 4 weeks ago, just before the draw, and he was saying it would be great to go back to Montpellier to see all my old mates and the chairman and all this
I think everyone
stuff.
wants to see the chairman.
So he's really looking forward to that. And, you know, we were talking about Florentino and Cristiano maybe having an emotional reunion after international duty. Well, I think him and big Lulu Nicolas, who really is big, will be having something similar. So that will be nice for them. But
easy win?
For Arsenal, I don't think so. I think Montpellier are just starting to come into form. And, you know, they have one of the players who I think will be one of the breakout players of the Champions League, and Younes Belhanda in midfield as well.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. If we look at the games on Tuesday now, of course, there's Borussia Dortmund versus Ajax, Malaga versus Zenit St. Petersburg, who have obviously, you know, gone out and splashed the cash. And Malaga, you know, trying really hard to not do the same. What do you think? Do you think that will be a really tough for Malaga? Zenit will take it?
It could be, but they've still got a gel. Of course, Zenit looked a little green in the Champions League last season. No Hawk jokes. I think Axel Witsel will be the key player for them this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But Malaga played great football in the qualifying round against, admittedly, a fairly weak Panathinaikos side, so they're not to be
And
ruled
also
out.
another side that's suffering economically, so maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe if they were faced against a side that was, let's just say, more stable in the background, then they wouldn't have done so well?
Maybe. I think they're just
They
a
are
lot better than Panathinaikos. But, you know, their key player is in midfield as well, Jérémy Toulalan. Everyone talked about Cazorla going, but Toulalan was their best player last season, the French midfielder, and he looks like he'll be fit for that game after a little bit of a niggle.
Well, let's look at the Wednesday ones. We've, of course, gone through Chelsea, Juventus. Then you've got Manchester United versus Galatasaray, Barcelona versus Spartak.
Yeah, I think that's quite an attractive fixture, and it's quite an attractive group as well. If you think of the European Cup history, especially between Barcelona and Benfica, and then
historically, yes,
towards the end of the 60s, you got Celtic as well. But Unai Emery's got a bit of a job on his hands at Spartak. They're quite an unstable club, but they've got a very, very good selection of talent. I'm really looking forward to seeing Romelu, the midfielder, who was really great in the playoffs until he went off injured. Play more for them. I think he'll be outstanding for them because he was so good for Brazil during the Olympics, and he could end up being one of their most important players going into 2014.
And what about Manchester United versus Galatasaray? Do you foresee any problems there? Could they be complacent like they were last season?
I don't think there's any doubt about it. They've looked a bit defensively fragile going into this season already. We know they've got problems in midfield. Whereas Galatasaray, they have one of the most experienced coaches in the competition in Terim. You know, they've got a really experienced side as well, and they've added a few interesting players to it, like Burak Yilmaz. So, you know, don't take it for granted.
Right, well, no one should really take it for granted, but do join us next week when we will actually give you the reaction on all these games and much, much more. Thank you so much for joining me as your host, Mina Rzouki, and of course, Andy Brassell. Please do join us next week, same time, same place, same football chat. See you then.